All right, we are here with Grustnogram, but first, Kaitlyn has got AI.
Well, not really AI. So CNBC has an article written by Sam Sheed talking about how people are just leaving Meta with all the bad news, all the bad press, and everything that's going on with Meta, aka Facebook. A lot of people are leaving the company right as they are trying to pioneer their new Meta platform. In particular, this article talks about the AI talent that's quitting, and they're trying to just go anywhere else, anywhere that's not Meta. So yeah, poor Facebook / Meta is just having a really tough time right now. Not that I have much sympathy for them, but they seem to be, this seems to be, this will be a good story for future textbooks, sort of like AOL, like what happened to Facebook? You know, what happened to Meta? It seems to be going down fast.
All right. Well, I've got a bunch of them. There's the only April Fool's one I thought was good this morning is the Mitre Attack people have made Mitre Attack NFTs. And what they are is just ampersands wearing like hats and standing, and they put them on OpenSea, and it looks like you can really buy them. So you can buy an ampersand wearing a hat symbolizing a Mitre Attack technique like create account, local account, command and scripting interpreter, and so on. So that sounds awesome. I see people liking them. I don't see any bids, although I'm not, no, the offers. Yeah, the offers so far are 0. Anyway, you could own a Mitre Attack NFT. And so the Russians, the troops were sent into Chernobyl in violation of the radiation protocol. And then they told them to dig trenches in violation of the protocol. And now a bunch of them are sick with radiation sickness. So this just furthers the nonsense of this Russian war where they just took conscripts and sent them into battle with no preparation at all. They don't even have good enough shoes to avoid frostbite. They just have nothing. And the last thing I heard yesterday is that Putin is raising another 135,000 conscripts to just throw more of them into the meat grinder to solve his problem in Ukraine. So we'll see what comes of that. And people are madder than anything at Wise. Wise sells security cameras, which are apparently very cheap, like $20. You use them to monitor your baby. And they found out 3 years ago that they're just sharing everything on their SD card publicly over the internet with no authentication, which includes the API key or something to see all the data. So you can see all your stored videos and log in and control it. And they knew that 3 years ago and didn't tell anybody. And so people are very, very, very upset that their Wise, if they had firmware updated it or bought the new model, it would have been okay, but they weren't told how important that was to do and feel very betrayed by Wise. And the last one I want to mention here is the Hubble. I saw this article a couple of times and I didn't pay attention. To finally looked at it, it's really very interesting. They've seen a star 28 billion light years away. At first I thought that's ridiculous. That must be a galaxy or something, but it's really a star. And the reason they can see it is because they found where a galaxy cluster forms a lens, a gravitational lens, creating basically a telescope, unthinkable billions of light years across, focusing in on a star, which is pretty brilliant. So they're actually seeing starlight from that far away, which is, I think, only 1 billion years after the Big Bang.
Right. And the other thing, too, is that you can use this technique to build the world's greatest telescopes here in our own solar system. So this was sort of a fluke.
Yeah.
We managed to just sort of line up directly with a galaxy cluster that created this gravitational lens. You can actually use the sun itself as a gravitational lens if you go out far enough.
But how do you block all the light from the sun from your interference?
You are far out one. You're like at in order for because the sun does not bend light that much.
Right.
So you have to be very far away from the sun for it to converge into a single point. So you're talking about being out near Neptune. And at that point, the sun starts to resemble just another star.
Oh.
And not only that, so you can just block it with a little piece of, just filter in the front of the camera, but you now have pretty much a sun diameter aperture for a telescope, and you can start resolution. You can then move the telescope satellite around the sun in any position Now, given the size, you would need like many of these out there, but you can technically use the sun in a similar fashion to create a telescope that would be powerful enough to view planets and other solar systems and stuff. So
That sounds awesome. What
yeah.
about things like Jupiter? Jupiter is
It's
almost as heavy.
not even close.
Okay. All right. Anyway, that sounds great, but you have to put a probe out in by Neptune or something.
Yeah, you have to put a probe very far out and multiple probes, because you're not going to move that one probe,
Right.
all around, that entire space. That would take hundreds and hundreds of years to reposition your satellite. So you should ideally send out a fleet.
And you can't use another star like Alpha Centauri. That's too far away.
Too far away. Yep.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's cool. All right. Let's go back to you. You've got the law enforcement or fake law enforcement.
Facebook law enforcement. Yeah. So 9 to 5 Mac has an article written by Jose Adorno talking about a wonderful attack. I love this attack against Apple and Facebook. So what did they do? Some hackers called Apple and they called Facebook, and they're like, "Hello, we are law enforcement. Give us your user data. We're very serious." And they did it. Apple and Facebook gave these people confidential information about their customer. And apparently, most requests usually have a search warrant. However, emergency requests don't require a court order. So they just said it was an emergency request, pretended to be law enforcement, and got a bunch of privileged user information.
Yeah, in their articles I read, they didn't have much of a cure. They said, we really do have to respond quickly to emergency requests. We don't have time to like verify the requester or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like they're just going to remain vulnerable to this.
Yeah. So, okay. All our data is at risk because law enforcement needs emergency access to it. Okay.
Well, that's true, but there are real emergencies. I mean, yep. Anyway. All right. So this one I couldn't believe. Honda cars, a bunch of them, just replay the same unencrypted RF signal to open the doors and start the car. So you can just steal them. And these guys have, all you need is like the ability to record and replay an RF signal. That's amazing. That's still true. I could see 10 years ago, but.
Yeah, no, it's still a common problem in a lot of security devices. As you've seen, Sam, I've had some fun using similar attacks against quote unquote security. You unlock it with a remote. So yeah, anytime you have a device that has a remote that you lock and unlock your thing with, it's always a good idea to take out your hack RF, sort of see what it's transmitting.
Yep. And see if it's actually randomized or challenge response or something.
Yeah, and use challenge response is pretty advanced for a fob, but there are definitely ways to rotate the codes.
Right.
Now, rotating the codes can have a problem in that if you manage to get the key fob to send out a code that the receiver doesn't receive, that you can sort of cache it and use it later.
Right.
But once you use it, it's done.
Yep. And then there's the relay attack and stuff.
Yep. And there's relay attacks. There's these wireless technologies aren't necessarily as secure as one would hope.
Well, this is something that's almost always true. If you have some gadget and you don't have any way to audit it, you can generally assume they've done the stupidest possible thing.
Yes.
So this one's getting all over the news. The Spring 4 shell 0-day in Java. Apparently 3/4 of all Java instruments, Java software is using this thing, Spring 4 shell, but it's not the default version that's vulnerable. You'd have to have some perhaps unusual settings here. But anyway, apparently you got arbitrary code execution on some vast number of servers, and they said everybody was going to have a bad weekend last weekend having to patch all this. So not quite as bad as Log4j, but in the same general area. And Russia is preparing to make their own separate internet cut off from the real one. So they have been making clones of internet services. And one of the things they've attempted to make a Russian knockoff of is Instagram, and everybody complains and says it's horrible, it is worthless, they hate it. And so somebody made a satire one called Grustnogram, which is sad Instagram, where you can post pictures only of black and white of Russians looking sad about how the internet is gone. And so, they're headed for being North Korea. And apparently the normal people don't know this. All the businesses, I read a Twitch stream from a guy in Russia, and he said all the businesses just put up a sign saying, oh, we're closed for a couple of months until this war thing goes away, and then everything will go back to normal. Reminds me of what they said here in the early days of COVID. It's not coming back to normal anytime soon, because I think Putin has already announced, he hasn't done it yet, but if Putin seizes the airplanes, then I think they'll have no foreign business in Russia for 20 years. And I think, but apparently the majority of Russian citizens do not yet understand the seriousness of the situation. They think this is just a squabble, it'll blow over in a couple months and everything will go back to normal, which I highly doubt. But anyway, let's go back to you. You've got the decommissioned satellite.
Yeah, so this is sort of interesting. Wired has an article written by independent somebody, I don't know. Oh, Lily Hay Newman. Newman's at it again. Anyway, so researchers they got access to the Mission Control Center. So this is a private commercial TV thing. So it's not like what you would see at NASA. It's just a small communication center with a satellite that they use to communicate. And they wanted to see what they could do with this satellite that's in a graveyard orbit. So presumably, if it's in a graveyard orbit, it used to be geostationary. And a lot of broadcast television stuff is in geosynchronous orbit. In the early days, it was C-band. Nowadays, it's mostly like K-band. But anyway, so they took this satellite that was in graveyard orbit, and they sent commands from the control center to turn it back on and to start broadcasting again. And this brings up a fundamental issue with the way that we treat dead satellites, especially ones that aren't going to deorbit. We just sort of leave them up there. We suppose you can't really turn them off, because what if you need to turn them back on again? And most of this technology, once they're decommissioned, are like 5-10 years old. So you have a bunch of these old satellites sitting around in the graveyard orbit that could apparently just be hacked and turned on at any time if you knew the correct, command codes, and you knew the correct frequency to broadcast at. And you have to know this stuff. A lot of the stuff is public, like the frequencies. But the command dictionaries, a lot of them have, they should have some sort of encryption. A lot don't. But it's hard to debug something that's hundreds of, hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. So if you try to fuzz it with some command codes, it's hard to see if you're getting anything back. But we'll see.
So they did manage to broadcast something through it?
They did. They absolutely managed to broadcast their own television signals from a satellite that was in the graveyard orbit. So,
like Max Headroom.
Yes.
All right. I got a few more here. Apparently, this is probably the largest crypto hack again. $600 million stolen from Axie Infinity, which was one of the first NFT games. You have to buy 3 NFTs to play the game. But they didn't want to pay the Ethereum transaction fees, so they put on side chains, and they made it so there's only 9 validator nodes that run with proof of authority, so they can just do anything they want. And then they didn't secure the validator node, so somebody managed to take over 5 of the validator nodes, and they could just do anything. And so they printed a ton of it and stole $600 million from it. So we'll see. One thing to understand about this is, as we're seeing in Russia, if you were to steal $600 million, you can't convert that into $600 million of real money. Just like Russia can't fund their oil production with Bitcoin, because you can't sell that much cryptocurrency or the market will crash. The market is very thin, but its nominal value is 600 million. It would not be easy to actually turn that into cash anytime soon, as we saw with that crazy rap singer in New York City that was sitting on billions of dollars of supposed crypto and couldn't really launder it and turn it into real cash. And apparently, here's another one. In Britain, or in the European Union, they made passed a bill. It's not done yet. It's passed through the first stage in a committee to block unhosted wallets and require cryptocurrency to report all the transactions so they can check them. And this is probably to try to do something about money laundering through crypto. The crypto exchanges like Coinbase are very, very, very angry about this. And we'll see if that actually passes in the European Union. If it does, it would probably drive a lot of crypto out of the EU, perhaps over to the US. And pregnant women are apparently at a very high risk of serious COVID when they get a breakthrough case, even though they're vaccinated. Apparently pregnancy counts as like a comorbidity and makes them at higher risk. So they really need to get vaccinated and boosted and probably be careful. And the last one, there's a Twitter follower of mine called Old Man who sent me this video from somebody called Peter Zihan. I'm going to try and share this screen. Let me see if I can figure this out. Share screen. And the plan was, it's just like everybody, I have too many windows open and I can't find the app I want to send. There at preview, there we are. That should do it. So this is a diagram towards the end of his talk, which I thought was really very interesting. He's analyzing American politics. And so you got social, conservative to liberal, and economic, liberal to social. And his point was, the Republicans are the red ones here in the bottom right corner, conservative both economically and socially, and that's why the Republicans tend to stick together. And the Democrats are sort of sprawled through the whole rest of the map, and that's the problem, as we're seeing. For example, if the Democrats have a majority in the Senate, they still can't get anything done because they're not really all on the same team, and they don't really agree about much of anything. They're a broad tent coalition of people that really aren't very much in agreement about anything, about policies. But this all changed because of Donald Trump. Donald Trump rose this small group of populists down here, and he brought in the evangelical and pro-life and drove everybody else away. So the Republican Party has gone way down here in social conservative. It's all this culture war stuff, getting rid of all the gays and transgender people and green M&Ms and every other thing like that. They're all in on that stuff, and that has driven away all the serious intellectual Republicans that used to focus on things like national security and business and fiscal conservatives, and left them orphans, not represented by the Democrats or the Republicans. And I've noticed this. I seem to be mostly aligned with those orphans. The never Trump Republicans are the people I like best, like the Bulwark and stuff, that people that would like to make sense economically and military and not be in on all this crazy hating gay people and stuff. And so they're just lost. And he was talking to a military group about this. And he said, I don't know what to tell you. He said, you poor guys that take national security seriously are just left alone here right now. And, I think the utopian solution to all this is we need a third party. Or, as I've heard people say, we really should have a parliamentary system where we can have many parties to get some representation, because the thing that really destabilizes your government is when you have a bunch of people that can't get any representation at all. And that's the problem with America. We got a lot of people that just feel like the government is completely not representing them at all or helping them at all. And that's not healthy. Anyway.
So what you're suggesting is some sort of ranked choice system.
Sure, ranked choice would be good.
Yep. So basically you would be put in the economic liberalism in the top left, Sam.
No, I think that's where you would be. I think I'm over here in the middle, economically.
I'm part of the I'm definitely part of the evangelical populist.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd put you over with the socialist Greens, where I figure, but what do I know? But anyway, the thing is, I'm more than anything, which I think is pretty common, I just hate Donald Trump. I want to be far away from these social conservatives that just want to put the women back in the kitchen and kill all the gay people and stuff. I don't want to be anywhere near these people. Anyway, I thought it was really quite intelligent. I appreciate Old Man for sharing it with me. He's right. It was a very interesting analysis. And I think, like any intelligent analysis, the problem is there's no obvious cure. But anyway, it seems like the first step to fixing our problems would be to understand them. And I must say, I'm very impressed with Andrew Yang. He really seems to understand what's going on. So far, he hasn't been a very effective candidate winning races, but he's a very good analyst understanding what's happening in America. So hopefully he'll learn the game of being a candidate better, or find a better candidate to support. Anyway, that's it for this one. It being Friday, we'll be back on Tuesday.